Hey everybody, on this episode of AfterBuzz TV Spotlight On, we're getting up close and personal with actor Spencer Garrett. Let's do it.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AfterBuzz TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
All right, a little Tom Petty bringing us into this AfterBuzz TV Spotlight On. Of course, this is a show where we get up close and personal with all the people both in front and behind the camera and bring you all the great entertainment you get to watch, whether it's be on the big screen, small screen, maybe on your mobile streaming device. I'm your host, Frank Moran. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at HappyGoJackie. Now, my guest today, he's a third-generation actor and a very familiar face on the big and small screen. And chances are, if you name a TV show, he's been on it. Star Trek Next Generation, Mad Men, CSI, Murder, She Wrote, The X-Files, and that just barely scratches the surface of the deep roster films and TV shows that he's been on. And if you don't think that he's popular, ladies and gentlemen, Taylor Swift once gave him a shout out at a party for his work on Law & Order. So you can catch him now on Amazon's Bosch, HBO's comedy series, two of them, both Insecure and the new Duplass Brothers series, Room 104, as well as on Showtime's Dice. And he's also working on a new film with Hugh Jackman and Vera Farmiga, the Jason Reitman film, Frontrunner. So please welcome one of the hardest working people in Hollywood, Spencer Garrett.
Hi, Frank.
Spencer, there you go.
You sound very old.
No,
With that intro. Murder, She Wrote.
I know.
Murder, She Wrote?
What I love that it is such a deep roster of shows. It's like
yeah.
over 50 credits, and I feel like it's like a litmus test for people about what they kind of gravitate towards.
Yeah.
For me, I just started like picking. Oh yeah, X-Files, CSI. You start picking. You kind of can tell what
Started out
people.
in the 80s. That's when I started out. That's when I started working in 87, I think. So that was one of the earliest things I'd done. X-Files and Murder, She Wrote and all of that stuff when I was, when I was just out there grinding away.
But trade scenes with Angela Lansbury. I mean, that's.
She was extraordinary. She still is extraordinary. I mean, she's I think 90 possibly, and she's still going strong, and one of the loveliest and kindest people that I've ever had a chance to work with. I'm blessed to have had a chance to work with her for sure.
Now, for somebody, as you said, kind of coming in like the early 90s, getting a chance to work with some of these legends.
Yeah.
What's it like kind of starting out and all of a sudden you're sharing the screen like with an Angela Lansbury or...
She made it easy. She made it fun. I mean, it was the first job that I'd gotten where I didn't have to audition. She cast all of her guest stars right off of their tape, off the demo reel, which at that time in my career was fairly thin. So I was really jazzed when I found out that she wanted me to be on her show, and I ended up doing I think 3 of them over the course of 3 or 4 years. At one time, the second one I did, Juliana Margulies, pre-ER, was my girlfriend on the show, and I remember she told me she was auditioning for this little medical drama called ER, and I said, ER? What a stupid name! Nobody's going to watch that. So come to me for advice in your career.
Well, I guess before we go any further with you, Spencer, as we get into everything, we pull back the curtain, reveal everything about Spencer Garrett.
God.
Just want to give a quick shout out here to our super friends before we dive into everything with Spencer. We want to remind you about the exciting changes at our network. You may have noticed that AfterBuzz TV Spotlight airs now on a brand new YouTube channel. That's because we're catering content to match your wants and needs on all of our shows. Currently live on content for our live on air.
You can do it.
I can do it. Gotta breathe deep. Our live on-air content verticals here. So basically, we're catering to you, the superfan. We've got a bunch of different verticals, and we decided why don't we just cater to all of them by kind of really diversifying our programming and making sure that we're putting the right programs on the right network so they get to you. So if you love comedy, if you love drama, sci-fi, superhero fantasy, reality TV, reality competition, animation, wrestling and sports. I know you're a huge sports person.
Big time.
Big golfer.
Sounds like my entire life right there.
That's right.
Wrestling.
Red carpets, events, and featured and originals. So we're splitting all our programming underneath those categories. So make sure you check out AfterBuzz TV Spotlight on the AfterBuzz TV Spotlight dedicated platform, as well as all the other dedicated platforms for all these various topics there. So check it out on AfterBuzzTV.com. And if you have any questions, feel free to email us at info@AfterBuzzTV.com. Boy, that was terrible.
Well done. Well done.
Holy
you got
cow.
it. You got it. You
I got the
flow.
gist. I got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oof.
Once you got in the flow,
You just had to keep rambling.
Sure.
Enough. Yes.
It's Sunday afternoon.
That's true. We're taking it easy today.
Yeah.
Now, I did describe you, and I'm sure many people have described you as this, as the one of the hardest working people in show business.
I'll take it.
Do you like that title, or do you feel like, oh man?
I mean, I'm just happy to be working, but I work hard too. Yeah. But hardest working man in show business. I'll let James Brown. He can have that mantle. He can have that one forever. I'm a good working actor that's been very lucky to keep going, and I'm grateful for every opportunity. So.
Because I know even before we started going on air here, you said I just want to keep working.
Yeah.
Do you worry that you could wake up one day and nobody's going to be reaching out to you for roles? Is that a constant worry, or do you feel like that you've established yourself enough that you're comfortable? You don't have to worry as much.
I think I don't have to worry as much, but I mean, you never know. This business is so cyclical. I grew up. My grandparents were actors. My mom's an actor. My father was a talent agent in the business for 50 years, so I was around actors a lot growing up, and I was around a mom who I saw her career go up and down. So I was before I got into this wackiness, I was well aware of the pitfalls, and I knew what I was getting myself into. So, but I don't go to bed at night dreading, am I going to get a job tomorrow? I mean, I feel like I've got the pretty good skill set. I mean, if we go through, it's a feast or famine business. I mean, we go through peaks and valleys, and but I feel like I'm going to work in 3 weeks on a movie, so I got that going for me, which is nice.
So you don't necessarily, because I feel like when anybody is starting out, whether it be in acting or any sort of profession where it's kind of more of a freelance type basis, there's that initial sweating. You got to kind of prove yourself. You got to take everything you can because you just got to get yourself in. Do you still feel that feeling at all? Like I just got to jump at everything, or you feel like no, I've kind of gotten to a level where I can be more choosy. I don't have to sweat it out if I'm not working for 3 weeks.
I never want to feel like I've gotten to a certain level where I don't have to worry about it. I mean, I read for something the other day, and I walked into a room, and there was 12 friends of mine, 12 guys, and we've all known each other for 25 years, and so we're all this. A small group of us that tend to go up for the same roles, and we're all friends. We all know each other. We all like each other. So there's still the competition. You still say, "Hey man, how you doing? Good to see you." And then you go in and you read because you want the gig. So it's that part of it never gets any easier. The competition part never gets any easier. But I like to think that when I go in the room, hopefully I'm the guy that's going to walk out with the job. But you never know.
Are the 12 of you just outside kind of placing bets? Like, all right, I think it's going to be Jack. He's going to get it. All right.
Yeah, I hope not. I hope not. I mean, it's nice when you walk in the room and Joe says, "Oh, great, Spencer's here. I might as well turn around and go home." But I mean, you never know. You never know when you walk in that room. You never know what's going to happen or what they're looking for. It's always you walk in the room and you're too tall or you're too short or your hair's too brown or your eyes are too blue or something. There's always something that they're looking for that you never know. So you just go in there and do the best job you can.
Well, growing up with, as you said, your mom was an actor and your dad was a talent agent. What's it like being able to grow up with parents on both sides of the business there? You kind of get in two different perspectives. Did that make it easier, or was it?
Yeah, it made it easier in the sense that I had an awareness early on when I was a kid. I had an awareness of what the business was and the ups and downs of it. I mean, my father represented actors for 50 years. He started out in the studio system at 20th Century Fox in the 1950s, and he worked with people like Marlene Dietrich and Marilyn Monroe and Cary Grant and Jimmy Stewart. And so, it's when you're 10, 11, 12 years old and you're watching your parents in the business, it was a different time. I mean, it was just a different time. The business was different, and now it's grown so much, and there's so many different platforms, and there's more and more competition. So it's changed a lot. But I feel like I've been able to navigate my way around throughout the years because I had a good sense of the history where I was coming from.
Do you think it's better or worse now than it was back when your mother and father were working?
What's better?
The industry, is it better or worse?
It's terrific. I mean, we're in a golden age of television. Television also including, Netflix and Hulu and Amazon. I mean, there's all these new platforms making extraordinary content. I mean, the stuff that's coming out of television, even the streaming services and the network television, it's almost better than what's coming out in feature films. I mean, television is is better than the movies, as far as I'm concerned.
And I guess I probably shouldn't have said better or worse. I should say easier or harder in terms of, say, an actor wanting to, working. Is that easier now with so many different platforms? Does that kind of make it easier for an actor, or
I don't
it's
think,
still?
I think it's always, as an actor, as a character actor, it's you're always looking for the right fit. You never know what they're looking for, but it's I think it's easier for us now because there's so much work out there. There's much more work available to us. So it's it's just, but the competition is still the same.
So now to back up a little bit, you actually worked at NPR in DC.
I did, yeah.
In DC for 4 years.
For about 3.5 years, yeah.
So
at college.
what was it like working at NPR?
It was terrific. I mean, I was a 21-year-old kid. I was an intern, so I worked on the Hill. I was kind of sent up the Hill. I was a kind of a fancy errand boy. I was an errand boy in a suit and a briefcase, and I spent time on the Hill going to Senate Appropriations Committee hearings and congressional anything that had anything to do with giving money to public broadcasting, whether it was public radio or PBS. And I would go back and I would report on it. Again, I mean, it was a very analog time. I mean, I was, scribbling notes with a pen and a pad. There was no email. There was no cell phones. So it was very, it was very primitive in a way.
Did it give
was
you
a blast?
Did it give you a better appreciation for the political process?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was always. I grew up with. My mom was very activist politically in the Democratic Party, and so I've always been kind of politically active and into politics. So when I was in D.C., when I was living there for those 3 years, it was very cool to be, walking around on Capitol Hill and meeting senators and congressmen and being a part of that world. It's very different, but it was very interesting for me. At 20, 21, 22 years old, for a brief time, I thought that's what I wanted to do for a living. That's what I thought I wanted to get into politics. Thank God I didn't.
Well, before that, you'd studied at Duke.
I did.
So now, I mean, I don't know if you were a big Dookie in terms of all the sports and
Sure.
stuff. So when you start hearing everything now about the college basketball teams, when you hear stuff like this, does it surprise you that just the kind of you see a lot of the money exchanging hands in terms of players, sponsorships, things like that?
It's shocking, but it's not surprising. I mean, if you're talking about Rick Pitino and Louisville,
Yes.
and all that, yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, you don't hear that kind of stuff when people talk about Duke. That hasn't occurred. But other universities, it's happened, and it's unfortunate. And I mean, they're treating their college athletes like it's a business, and I think it takes the fun out of the sport for them because they're kids, and all of a sudden you introduce money into their lives. And they're called upon to be sponsors for products and stuff. I don't think it's a good idea.
So now, because I know there's a big competition between the Tar Heels and the Blue Devils.
There's no competition.
There's not, of course, somebody from Duke. Yes, of course, there is no competition.
I mean, Carolina had a pretty good year last year. I'll give them that. Yeah.
Because I've been down.
I'm partial. What can I say?
You'll give slight credit where credit's due, but otherwise, is there? Because I always just wonder. I visited both universities, and but certainly after I'd already gone through college and stuff. So, but just seeing just like the intense rivalry between those, is that something that do you go in to starting at Duke having that rivalry, or is that kind of just instilled upon you during your 4 years there?
I was only there for about 2.5 years.
Okay.
I left after I left it midway through my the end of my junior year. I mean, I went there to study. I was not. I wasn't a rabid sports guy. And also, when I was at Duke, the basketball team, you and I probably could have beaten them, the two of us. It was not a great powerhouse basketball team that it is now. I mean, it was Mike Krzyzewski was just starting out, so they were not the extraordinary dynastic team that they became. They were pretty green. They were not fabulous. So. It was you could buy a ticket and walk into Cameron Indoor Stadium with no problem. You didn't have to camp out for 3 days in the snow. That was after my time. So
just seeing photos and hearing stories about people, the way they would camp out for those tickets.
Oh yeah,
bonkers. I just can't imagine.
Yeah. That was a little before. It was a little before my era. fortunately, because you could just kind of buy a ticket and walk in, and then a couple years after I left, they became just phenomenal. And in the early '90s with Leitner and Hurley and all those guys. So.
Well, for me, I went to school at Northern in DeKalb, and lived in a dorm right across from the football stadium. Never once did I even bother to walk across the street to see a football game.
Really?
I was right there. I never did it. Although I love football now, at the time I was like, nah, I don't want to go do that. I don't know. You never appreciate what you have right so close to you.
Probably not. I mean, I wish that I'd gone to more games when I was at Duke. I mean, I probably went to 2 or 3 ball games when I was a student there. I mean, I was too busy trying to pass my classes. I mean, I was doing theater and musical theater and writing for the newspaper, and I had my hands pretty full, so I didn't have a lot of time for basketball. I wish I had made more time for it now, but I had a good time.
Speaking of writing for the newspaper, was there a particular section that you covered, or you pretty much?
I was a movie critic for the Duke Chronicle. Yeah, they would give me like $7. It was like $7 to go to the movies, and I would go to the Carolina Theater and I would go see a movie, and then I would write a review of it. So.
Now, were you one of those reviewers that would love to just kind of tear into something, or were you very much like a soft touch when it came to reviewing a film?
I was fair. I was tough but fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not a tear into something kind of guy. I mean, I've always been a movie freak, so I think I was pretty fair. I think I did about 10 movie reviews over the course of 2.5 years, though. So I mean, I don't think anybody would confuse me with with Pauline Kael or Andrew Sarris or any of the great theater critics and the movie critics at the time. So I was just pretty green as a writer.
So doing the writing, but also performing in theater, doing musical theater, and then even your time at NPR, was acting always kind of like the end game for you, or was it still like, I'm going to kind of maybe dabble in politics, some writing?
There was no end game. I was living in D.C. And just on a dare, somebody said, hey, they're doing auditions at the Arena Stage, which is DC's sort of premier regional theater company, and they were having auditions for production of Richard II. And speaking of Richard II earlier, and I had never done any Shakespeare in my life, and I kind of thought, I mean, I'd done a few plays at Duke, I'd done a few plays and a few musicals, and I stupidly thought, just by osmosis, because my grandparents were actors and my mom was an actor, I just sort of assumed that I would have this kind of sense of how to do Shakespeare. And I went and I auditioned for this production of Richard II. I was god-awful. I was terrible. And I ended up getting cast. Not as Richard II, but I ended up like getting a guy carrying a spear. And that gig, carrying the spear, in this production of Richard II, was enough to kind of, that was just enough to whet my appetite that made me want to come back for more.
Were your parents surprised, or that you decided I'm going to take the plunge, kind of follow in especially your mom's footsteps?
Were they surprised that I decided to become an actor?
Yes.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I mean, I think, I remember calling my father and saying, I think I've decided what I want to do for a living, and I told him I was going to be an actor, and I don't think he was that surprised. And then, of course, he called my mom and he said, guess what, Kathy, our kid wants to be an actor. And she said, what did you expect, an astronaut? I mean, coming from a third generation of actors. So, no, they were happy. And when I made the decision, and my mom, who had studied with great acting teacher Sanford Meisner at the Neighborhood Playhouse in New York, and she said, well, if you're gonna do this, if you're really gonna do it, then you got to study with the best. So I studied with a wonderful teacher named Sanford Meisner for about 7 years.
Of course, with the Meisner technique. Mm-hmm. Yes. Certainly I've kind of seen the books. I've never really read much of the Meisner technique. But so what's it like working with somebody that is just so well known for having his own approach to acting?
He was pretty tough on me. I mean, he was in his 80s by the time I got to him. He had been doing it for a long time. He started teaching in the late 30s, early 40s. So by the time I studied with him, he was, I think, in his late 70s, early 80s, physically not in fantastic shape, but mentally like sharp as a tack. So he had cataract surgery. He had very thick Coke bottle glasses that you could barely see through, and he had his larynx moved. He had a laryngectomy. So he spoke. He had taught himself how to speak by swallowing gulps of air. Sounds really wild, but I mean, he had a little microphone attached to his glasses, and he would sit there with his cane in the back of the class, and he would talk like this, and it would come out like this, and it came out of a speaker on the side, and the theater, and we would sit there, and it was just fascinating because like it had this sort of Yoda-esque kind of feel to it. You were in the presence of this guy who could really not move very well, but he could hear a false move. He could sense what you were doing on stage was inauthentic or not honest, and it was extraordinary. It's really amazing to study with him.
For you, what was the biggest obstacle that you had to overcome just with yourself performing when you were studying with him?
I don't know that I had any obstacles. I mean, I was gung ho. I was excited to just kind of jump in. He was particularly tough on me because my mom had been a student of his 50 years earlier. So I think he sensed maybe something in me. He believed in me. So he was harder on me because he wanted me to succeed. But at the time when I was with him, I think I took it. It was tough because he was really tough on me, and I didn't understand it at the time. I didn't understand that the reason he was being so hard on me was because he wanted me to succeed. But only years later did I kind of figured that out, that he actually believed in me, and was sort of pushing me harder than some of the other kids because I think maybe he sensed that I had something. I don't know. That's my theory.
And I feel like it's because for you as somebody who
still trying. By the way, I'm still trying to. I've been doing this for 30 years now, and I feel like I'm still trying to figure it out. I feel like I'm just now getting good at it. So.
Well, now you also teach as well. So in terms of how your approach to teaching, is it influenced very much by the way that you were taught, or do you kind of try to do things that are like, I want to do something a little different?
I teach at a Meisner-based school. I teach as a wonderful acting teacher named John Ruskin, who teaches at the Ruskin School here in Los Angeles, and every once in a while he asks me to come in and do a master class for his students. And I mean, it's the teaching that I give comes rooted in the Meisner technique, but it's also comes from what works for me. Kids will get up and do a scene, and they'll partner up together, and they'll do a scene from something that they've been working on in progress, and I'll give them like an adjustment or a tweak, because I have an idea, I think, of what works better. I mean, I give them a direction that's rooted in the Meisner technique. I don't want to sound like highfalutin and actory when it comes to it, but I just enjoy the hell out of it too. I love watching these kids find things and discover things about themselves that they didn't know that they were capable of doing. That's a really joyous part about doing it for me.
Do you find that you are like Meisner in some respects towards some of the people that you teach, where you may be harder on them because you sense something in them, or do you kind of not go that far?
I am. I'm kind of a soft touch when it comes to them, I think. I mean, and also, like, I'm not the regular teacher, so I don't feel comfortable going in and, like, Sandy had an old wooden cane, and he used to slam his cane down on the ground if he sensed a false note. I'm not into that. It's like I'll just gently pull them aside and say, hey, try this, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It's also about my friend Leslie Kahn, who's a great acting teacher here in town. She has a saying. It says called "Dare to Suck." So it's like dare to suck. Just, I mean, it's you gotta fail. You gotta fail to find out what you're good at.
Well, as you were saying too, it's like you're feeling you're getting it. I feel like with anything you're passionate about, whether it be acting, whatever study it might be, improv, something like that. It's just you can never stop learning. There's always something new to kind of discover by yourself.
Never stop learning. Yeah, I mean, whether it's taking, like you said, like it's taking an improv class, or a singing class, or a movement class, or a stage combat class. I tell my students, you can never stop learning, and always. And also feel like students today don't have as much of a sense of the history of the business and a theatrical history. So I'm always encouraging them to read plays and watch films from the past, because their worldview tends to be kind of what's happening now. But if you go back and look at great films from the '60s and '70s and read old plays, I mean Sam Shepard, who we just lost recently, passed away, and one of our greatest playwrights, and I mentioned his name in class a few weeks ago, and they hadn't heard of him. It sort of took me aback, because that's like, I mean, I used to walk around with a tattered copy of Sam Shepard's plays in my backpack. I mean, he was like, he was sort of a guru to me. So it's important to give them a sense of, the literature and the theater that came before, that inspired what's going on now.
Now, having been on both coasts, New York and LA, in terms of acting and the approach, is there much difference between either coast, the way that they kind of approach their careers, the profession, the acting?
I think it's bi-coastal now. I think there used to be this kind of like, oh, he's a New York actor or she's a New York actor, and there was sort of a sense that the New York actor was kind of up here, and the Los Angeles actor was. LA actors were film and TV, and New York actors came from the theater, But now we're in New York, we're in Los Angeles, we're in Atlanta, we're in Vancouver, we're in Toronto. We go where the work is, and it's a global business, and so I don't think there's that distinction so much anymore. But there used to be that sort of New York. I always had this feeling like when I came out in the early '90s that because I moved out here when I was 25. And I didn't spend the first 10, 15 years of my career, doing awful theater for $72 a week. I moved out here when I got out of college. I came out here and I wanted to be in the film and television industry, and I always looked up to the actors that were still grinding away doing theater in New York, because they put their time in. So now, in the later part of my career, I'm finding that I'm wanting to go back and doing more theater as much as I can, because it's a part of my life and my theatrical upbringing that I missed out on in the early stage of my career. So I'm trying to kind of fill up my heart with as much theater as I can.
Is it easy to balance wanting to do that but also wanting to do film and television? I imagine it takes a lot of schedule coordination.
It's a tough balance because. Like I said, because work is, we're going after work in a very, very competitive business, and you don't get paid as much anymore. So doing theater is tough. If you commit yourself to taking 2-3 months off to do a play, you're not going to be making that kind of money. So if you want to support yourself doing film and television, it's hard. You have to find a balance. I mean, if you're making great dough, and you can afford to feed your theater Jones and your theater habit, that's one thing. But it's tricky to find the balance. It really is sometimes.
Is there something to be said for being able to just kind of really sink into a role where you're doing it for a 2 to 3 month run and really just kind of really dive deep, as opposed to whether it be a TV show or a film where you might be in there for 10 days, you might be in there for a couple months, and that's it, you're off to the next thing?
Well, meaning what specifically?
In terms of just like having a character that you can really just kind of dive into if you're doing like a 3 month run.
Oh yeah, I mean, the best example, about 5 years ago, I did a wonderful play here in town at the Geffen, written by Lynn Nottage, who I think she's the first woman to win the Pulitzer Prize twice. She won the Pulitzer Prize this year for a play called Sweat that was on Broadway. And I played 2 characters. I played a Russian Jewish film producer in Hollywood in the 1930s in the first act, and then in the second act I played a talk show host, like a kind of a cheesy TV talk show host in the 1970s, and 2 totally different characters. And so I got to live with those 2 guys for the 3 or 4 months that we were doing the play, and so that was my sole focus. That was my sole. That was all I was focused on for those 3 months. Was, I had to fully embody those 2 guys for those 3 months, and nothing else mattered. So, when you commit to doing something like that, you got to throw your whole heart and soul into it. So, and that's what we love.
So, yeah, as you mentioned, kind of like the earlier time eras that you're playing those characters in that play. You've said in an interview where it's like you can very easy kind of get cast in period pieces for you.
I love period stuff. I love getting cast in period stuff.
Whether it be in Public Enemies, Mad Men, or like playing McCarthy.
People
over in
always tell me I
Timeless.
have like a face from the 40s. Like
Is
a
that-
face from the 40s or 50s. Like my face doesn't fit today. I don't even know what that means. But I always feel like, listen, Public Enemies, I'm putting on these beautiful suits and wearing hats, and part of being an actor is, loving to play cowboys and Indians, playing dress up. So putting on the suit in Mad Men, that great suit with the skinny tie, or putting on the gangster's outfit in Public Enemies. I guess my sensibility, I've always felt like I would have thrived in the 40s and 50s. I felt like if I was an actor or just a person in the 40s and 50s, I think I would have had a blast, because I've always been very attracted to that time. I love the way guys wore clothes back then. The guys wore suits. I love the fashion of the times back then. I also just love the movies. I love the movies of the 40s and 50s and the actors that were coming up. So, it's I love doing the period stuff, but I tend to gravitate toward that stuff more, because it's just sort of more delicious to play, more fun to play. There's a great show on Amazon, The Last Tycoon, that just ended. And I didn't get a chance to do that. I was like, oh man, I want to be on that show, because I love those clothes. I love I love the way people dressed, and I just love the time, the early studio system in the 1920s and 30s. It just would have been a blast to play. So I'm always looking for stuff like that.
Does that do a lot of work for you in terms of diving into a character? Is just the wardrobe?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You put the hat on, or you put the shoes on. It all of a sudden you look at yourself and you go, oh yeah, there's the guy. So that's definitely part of it. I love that part.
So now, more contemporary. We've, as we're talking about, like Amazon's Bosch. We've got the Duplass Brothers new series, Room 104. Is it an anthology series? Is that?
It's an anthology series. In that particular one, though, I was a buddy of mine, a wonderful actor, writer, director. I think it was his first directorial thing on television, named Ross Partridge. Is an old friend of mine, and he was directing this episode, and he asked me to come in, and I did a scene with Amy Landecker, great actor from Transparent, and I was actually with her on the other end of the phone, so all you heard was my voice on the other end of the phone. And he said, but I need a good actor with a good voice to play her boyfriend on the other end of the phone. So it was a really lovely, interesting, beautifully written 5-minute scene, but you only heard my voice in that, so that's not going to go on my reel.
No.
Yeah.
That's because I always wonder, like, how often when you're watching those telephone scenes, how often the actor's actually there feeding them those lines, or they're just
Yeah. No, I was in the other room, and you don't get the luxury of rehearsing a lot sometimes. Sometimes you get the job and you're there the next day. You'd mentioned Timeless earlier, the Joe McCarthy thing. I got the phone call on a Monday, and they said, we want you to play Joe McCarthy, and I was on a plane on a Tuesday, and I was in Vancouver shooting on a Wednesday, playing Joseph McCarthy, the red-baiting communist hunter in the 1950s, and I look as much like Joe McCarthy as you do. It was like, it's so inconceivable to me, and I had so little time to prepare. But in the case of Room 104, we went off to the side and we worked on it, and we worked on the relationship, and got a chance to figure out what our relationship to one another was, Amy's character and mine. And so when we did the phone call scene, I was in like a little booth in a room around the corner on the soundstage, and we had to play this very, very emotional scene. And she had just come from a plane crash, so she was very rattled and jangly and emotional, and it's a wonderful scene to play. It was thrilling, even though I was in this kind of funny little thing with a tarp over my head, talking into a microphone. Just the emotional life that was coming from her, getting to it was like I was there with her. It was one of the most fun things I've ever had a chance to do.
That's really cool, where you don't need to, because I see so much about acting is being able to connect with your scene partner, look in the eyes, and that connection, but still to be able to have the connection just through your vocal, through the voice.
Yeah, that was neat.
So now, to hop back to Timeless for a second, for Joe McCarthy, for that, when you get that call, I didn't realize that turnaround was so quick on that.
Bananas.
What do you do you pull up a couple things on YouTube real quick to see?
There was a wealth of stuff on YouTube. There was a lot of great footage on him, and you know, just Googled the heck out of him and just tried to get as much information on him as I could. But I wanted to get a sense of his physicality and his voice. I mean, he was heavy and dark-eyed and bald and very, very different physically. And but it was interesting that when I got up there, I caught the flu on my way. Between the time I got the job and the time I got to Vancouver, I'd actually gotten very sick. And I remember shooting the scene, and I felt this heaviness in my body. I was really under the weather, and all of that sort of dark-eyed stuff, like, you know, all of a sudden I sort of just like turned into the guy. But it was wild because I'd gotten the call, yeah, and like 2 days later I was on the set, and again with the clothes, I was in this beautiful, you know, this double-breasted suit with the hat, and we're in this, you know, I'm in Joe McCarthy's office, and they've got magazines, Time magazines printed up with my face on the cover, so it puts you in that world, you know, all of a sudden you're in this world. And got to play with Goran Visnik, the wonderful actor from ER, and was great to work with, and so and a wonderful director that I'd worked with before too. So, you know, if the environment is great and you're in a comfortable setting, I was feeling like I was dying, but I still I was having so much fun that it, you know, somehow it worked.
What I liked about that scene too is I'm a sucker for time travel series.
Yeah.
Time travel stories. That's one of my
I can't
favorite.
wait for Timeless for season 2. They're coming back. The fans brought it back.
Which I was so excited about because I was so
Crazy.
disappointed to see
Yeah.
that was canceled, and then I was so happy 3 days later they get brought back. I thought it was so great. But what I liked about that was just that it's. I mean, I guess you know what McCarthy is. I mean, at least what we think he is, and just in terms of what it was back there like in the 50s. But then add the element of somebody that's come back from our present who knows a lot of the dirty laundry on McCarthy to be able in that scene to kind of reveal some of those, you know, bits and pieces to see how like McCarthy reacts when all of a sudden people know something about him that, whoa, how does anybody know this?
Yeah. And also there was a line in the script where I was there was very kind of Trumpian parallels because the way that it was written was, you said, you know, everybody's out to get me, the press hates me, nobody likes me, I'm just, you know, I just fighting for America, I just want to do what's good for America. And I was sort of thinking about our current occupant of the White House. Not that they're the same guy, but it helped. The writing helped inform my portrayal of the guy. But I was very aware of him, and obviously and Good Night and Good Luck, George Clooney's brilliant film, which I'm a big fan of, seen many times, and so I had a pretty good idea how to play him, even though I had a very short amount of time to prepare for it.
Now, speaking of film, so you said you're a big film buff, film lover.
Yeah.
That I did see that you mentioned in an interview that you're a big fan of the Aliens films.
Yes.
Yes. So, what did you think of Alien Covenant?
Didn't see it.
Didn't see that big of a fan.
Sorry, I'm a big fan.
Yes.
But I have not.
He's busy. He's working.
I mean, what can I say? I haven't had a chance to. I haven't gotten around to it yet. I heard it's terrific. I saw Blade Runner.
2049. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I saw it on Saturday as well. What did you think?
Pretty intense. Beautifully done. Incredibly shot. Roger Deakins, man, what an artist. What a. I mean, like just a painter. It's just an extraordinary cinematographer.
Have you had the opportunity to work with him?
I have not yet. We worked with a lot of good ones, but I haven't worked with Deakins yet. He's been around for a long time. I hope I get a chance to, because it was just a gorgeous film to look at, and also the best work that Harrison Ford has done in a long time. I mean, I did Air Force One. It was one of my first movies, and we never got to meet because he was on the plane and I was in the White House, and I met him at the wrap party. I never got a chance to work with him, so hopefully I will. He's having this kind of wonderful career renaissance in his mid-70s. But he was his work was really just nuanced and deep, and he was terrific. That was the best part of the movie for me, was watching him play a guy that he'd played 30 years ago. So it was very cool. It's a great movie.
Yeah, it's been interesting with Harrison Ford, whether I guess we've got the next Indiana Jones film to look forward to, but to see him come back and reprise his role in Star Wars, now here at Blade Runner, to see him kind of revisit these seminal roles of his, and just see how he's able to just...
It's just, he wears it, man. He wears the characters. There's just they're in his bones now at this point, so he doesn't have to do a lot. You know, there's not a lot of acting going on, which is great. You know, he's just there, and he's just wonderful.
So, as we mentioned, you say you haven't had a chance to see Aliens film. Is it tough because you're
Sorry.
still working?
Sorry.
No, but
Sorry.
Ridley Scott.
Sorry, Ridley Scott. Yeah. Sorry, Cameron.
But being so busy, is it easy to keep up to date about the latest TV shows, films,
No.
theater?
No.
So you have friends, I'm sure, working on stuff like, hey, check this out.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a queue that's this long. I mean, I try to watch the shows that my friends are on, obviously. Big fan of Better Call Saul. My friend Patrick Fabian's on that. I'm loving that. Just starting to get into that. I still haven't seen Game of Thrones.
Neither have I. It's just
Okay,
you're right.
all right. I don't feel so bad.
Don't feel so bad, but there's just too much.
I tell people that, and they go, "What?" I mean, it's a
Yep.
it's a phenomenon. I just haven't had the time. It's on my list though. I promise. I'm dying to see it. It's just there's so many other things. I got really into The Night Manager.
Yeah, but I really enjoyed that
last year. And,
Man, Hugh Laurie is just great.
yeah.
In that role.
I'm not a big. I love television. I'm crazy about television, but I'm not a big like DVRing things and sitting down in front of my television set for hours and watching them. I'm watching right now. I'm watching the Vietnam documentary, Ken Burns' Vietnam documentary on PBS. It's like 20 hours. So that's my jam right now. Vietnam. It's fun.
I mean, there's a going on Netflix. I'll recommend to you, American Vandal, if you ever get a chance to watch it.
There's so many shows.
Yeah. It's
American Vandal?
American Vandal.
I haven't even heard of it.
It's produced by Funny or Die.
Okay.
And it's basically kind of a take on Serial, things like that, where it takes place in high school, and there's a kid that's expelled for supposedly drawing a bunch of penises on a bunch of teachers' cars in the parking lot. And they try to figure out, was he truly the person behind this, or is he being set up and framed?
Okay.
And so you got to follow, and it very much kind of follows that kind of Serial format, kind of investigating, but about a very silly topic.
All right.
But
American
treated
Vandal.
yeah.
Penises. All right.
Yeah.
I'll write that down.
That's right. There you go. There you go.
Sneaky Pete, I'm into. Been watching Sneaky Pete. It's great. So yeah, there's a long list, but I'll get to all of them. I swear.
Well, of course. They talked American Vandal on TV Pilot Reviews here. Oh, there you go. Thanks, Becca, there in the booth.
Oh, good.
Look at that. We'll read that really tiny review that you have up there, Becca. Thank you.
Is that the reviews up there? Yeah.
That very tiny little thing there.
If you were really were Ant-Man, you had like
That's right.
extraordinary vision. You could probably see that. Yeah.
So, as you mentioned, Ant-Man, and you talked about that you got an opportunity to work with an old friend of yours, Shane Black, on Iron Man 3.
Yeah.
I mean, I really just the way that he writes, I just
Great writer.
really
Such a great writer. Yeah.
I mean, ever since Lethal Weapon,
Punchy, funny. You know, he's there's nobody like him. Yeah.
Oh, and now, of course, you're sharing the scene with Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah.
Who, I mean, really just fits in that. I mean, he just took the role of Tony Stark and just ran with it, and just really liked what he brought to that role.
Just owns that guy. I love it. Yeah, he's great at it. And I mean, I had that one scene as the sheriff in I Am 3 a few years ago. But he's a wonderful collaborator. He's a guy that because he's such a great actor, and he loves actors, and he's been around for so long. And I was this low country Tennessee sheriff guy, and he comes into the bar, and he didn't like the way the scene was going, and so he pulled me and Shane aside, and we kind of reworked the scene, and we spent about an hour kind of figuring out where the scene was going to go, which was kind of cool to be included in the process. And then we shot the scene, and of course it ended up being like 9 seconds. But it was still a blast to do. It was a really fun movie to be a part of. I'd never been a part of like a big superhero movie, so.
Do you try to kind of treat it on projects that you're working on in that same situation where you'd like to be able to take co-stars, guest stars that are coming in a project you're working on, to kind of give them that opportunity to kind of collaborate like you had that opportunity on Iron 3?
Yeah, definitely.
Kind of paying it forward.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, absolutely. I love that.
Now you, of course, not a superhero in this film, but in Frontrunner, Hugh Jackman. We all know him as Wolverine. Did you see Logan?
No.
No. All right.
Sorry, Hugh. I didn't see Logan yet. I actually have. I have the DVD of it though. That's
close enough.
I have it. It's on my bureau with my television. I have it in a pile of DVDs. I have it at home. I'll watch it tonight. I have not seen Logan.
Proximity
I
counts.
wish I'd seen it. I should have watched it before I went and worked with Hugh 2 weeks ago in Atlanta. What a lovely guy he is. I mean, that was just a treat. So
the film's Frontrunner by
the
Jason
Frontrunner,
Reitman.
director Jason Reitman. I did Thank You for Smoking for him 15 years ago, 10, 12, something like that. wonderful, wonderful director, and I'm playing Bob Woodward in that. I'm playing the Washington Post journalist Bob Woodward.
That is very cool.
Yeah.
So
he's got an accent a little bit like you, actually. Kind of a Midwestern, much more. It's much thicker. There's a lot of flat A's and R's, and yeah. So he's from Evanston.
Okay.
So,
all right, a little bit north than me. Yes.
Yeah.
Northwestern man.
No, I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not sure where he went. No, he didn't go to Northwestern. But all I know is he's got a very thick accent. Yeah.
So for that, do you get a chance to chat with him before you do this film? Kind of pick his brain.
I did not. I'm gonna wait until after the movie's over. I have an opportunity to meet him, but I spoke to the director and he said I'd rather you wait until the movie's over.
Oh,
So,
interesting.
yeah.
Given your choice, would you rather talk to somebody that you're a real life character that you're kind of portraying? Would you want to talk to them, or you'd rather wait till after the project's over so you can do your kind
It depends. It depends on. In this case, the Woodward and Gary Hart had a relationship that changed. It started out as a very friendly relationship, and not to give anything away, but it started out as a friendly relationship, and then it kind of went in a different direction. So, from my understanding of it from the director, so in this particular case, he didn't want me to have any preconceived notions or opinions before I, when I went in and did the scene. So I've met plenty of real life. I played Tom DeLay in a movie called Casino Jack years ago with Kevin Spacey, and I met him before I did the film, and that was a trip. So sometimes it's better to meet them afterwards, because you want to come in with your own idea of how to play the character, and be as honest and true to the person you're playing. But then if you meet the person and they have their own opinions about the film, you don't want to get swayed in any direction. So in this case, but I will meet him, I'm sure.
I feel like it's interesting though to do a scene like that where there is a turn in a relationship, and not knowing kind of the backstory about why that person feels kind of betrayed in that scene, so to speak. To make your own assumptions, is it easy to kind of go through the script and kind of make the assumptions that you're going to make about why you're affected by this turn in the relationship?
No, I mean I got an idea from the director about their relationship, so I knew what was going on. So I don't want to give too much away, but I had an idea of why their relationship went the way it did.
So for you reuniting with Jason Reitman, thank you for smoking, and then you come back together like this, as you said, 15 years later. What's it like, kind of reuniting with somebody you worked with before?
It felt like I just saw him. I mean, I'd gone into audition for him in New York. I was in New York a few months ago and went in to read for him. And he's done obviously 5 or 6 movies since Thank You for Smoking. I mean, Juno and Up in the Air.
Did you see Up in the Air, Spencer?
Yes, I did.
There you go. See, he saw it.
Of course I did.
Yes.
Sure. But he's had tremendous success, and just an amazing filmmaker and a great collaborator, and loves actors. And so it was nice. I walked in the room, and it was like we'd just seen each other, and we hadn't seen each other in like 10 years. I saw him at the premiere of Up in the Air, which was, I don't know, not too long ago, a few years ago. But he's a lovely guy, and it's a treat to work with him.
So now, Spencer, you mentioned that you're heading back out in a few weeks.
Back to Atlanta, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Same film?
Same film.
Okay.
Yeah, finishing up on the Front Runner, yeah.
And what do you have anything else lined up after that?
After the Front Runner, I'm in the middle of producing. I'm doing a podcast actually of. About 6 months ago, I was lucky enough to have been invited to a table read of a pilot script called America 2.0 that I absolutely fell in love with this writer's work, and it's a political drama, and political dramas are a little radioactive at the moment, and his representatives were not that interested in pitching it. So we said, why don't we chop it up into like 6 pieces? Why don't we take this pilot and chop it up and turn it into a podcast? And he did, and podcasts are kind of the hot new thing.
It's true.
And so we have a cast now. We put together a cast that has, we've got Patrick Adams from Suits as our lead.
Oh, nice.
Lawrence Fishburne, Mary Louise Parker, Ming Na, And we've got a really amazing cast put together. We start recording tomorrow. So
Oh,
I'm very
that's
excited
very
about
cool.
it. Yeah.
Very nice. Look
Yeah.
at this. And not the only thing you've produced. I mean, I know you also did Below the Beltway too.
Yep.
So producing, are you enjoying having the
I love
producerial
it.
hat
Yeah,
on?
I love it. I love it. Yeah, it's fun. It's fun to be. It's fun to be behind. I mean, I'm also a voice. I'm also a character in America 2.0. I'm playing a role in it, but it's been fun putting this thing together. But Below the Beltway was my first time producing a movie, and that was a lot more challenging than putting together a podcast.
True, I can understand it, yeah.
But it was a lot of fun, and we had good success with that movie. So.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Time flies, and we've barely scratched the surface. Seriously, folks, I didn't even get to ask him about that Taylor Swift story. There's so much more to know about Spencer Garrett. But thank you for coming in.
My pleasure.
And Spencer, if they want to keep up to date with everything you're doing as one of the hardest working people in Hollywood, where can they find you?
I'm on the Twitters at #1 Spencer Garrett, and on Instagram at Spencer Garrett 1.
Oh, all right.
Pretty clever.
Moving that one all around there. Yeah, there you Ladies and gentlemen, please follow Spencer. I'm sure you've seen him on so many things, but keep a lookout for him for Front Runner as well, as he's going back to finish that up. And America 2.0. Listen to that on iTunes, Stitcher, I imagine, various other places.
It's on Gimlet Media. It's going to be coming out probably in January, so look out for it.
Oh,
It's
awesome.
gonna be terrific, yeah.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been Frank Moran. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at HappyGoJackie. Until next time, folks, we'll see you back here with another edition of Spotlight On, right here on AfterBuzz TV.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
See you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.